Chapter 4. Doctors. Where do I start? Doctors really don't get me. Mom's a nurse, so I guess she speaks her language, but they sure don't know how to talk to me. I've seen dozens of doctors in my life who all try to analyze me and figure me out. None of them can fix me, so I usually just ignore them and act like the retarded person they think I am. I paste on a blank look, focus on one wall, and pretend their questions are just too hard for me to understand. It's sort of what they expect anyway. When I turned 5, it was time to think about enrolling me in school. So my mom took me to a doctor whose job it was to figure out how smart I was. She wheeled me in, locked the brakes so my wheelchair would not roll, and made sure the lap strap was fastened. When my seatbelt comes undone, and it does every once in a while, I slide out of that wheelchair like a piece of wet spaghetti. The specialist was a very large man. The bottom button of his shirt had come undone, and his stomach poked through above his belt. Gross. "My name is Dr. Hugely," he said in a booming voice. For real, I couldn't make this stuff up. "We're going to play a game today, okay? I'll ask you some questions, and you get to play with the toys here. Won't that be fun?" I knew it would be a long, long hour. He brought out a stack of well-used, hopefully not lead-painted, wood blocks that leaned in so close to me I could see the pores in his face. Gross. "Can you stack these in order according to size?" he said loudly and slowly, as if I were hard of hearing and really stupid. But who was being stupid? Didn't he know I couldn't grab the blocks? Of course I knew which block was bigger than the others, but I couldn't stack them if he paid me money. So I just took my arm and swept them all to the floor. They fell with a wooden clatter. I tried not to laugh as he picked them up. He breathed really hard as he reached for them. Next, he held up glossy 8x10 cards with different colors painted on each one. "Tell me when you see the color blue, Melody," he said in that voice that told me he thought that this was all just a waste of time. When the blue card showed up, I pointed to it and made a noise. "Buh!" I said. "Marvelous! Tremendous! Stupendous!" he shouted. He praised me like I had just passed the test to get into college. If I could have rolled my eyes, I would have. Then he showed me green. So I kicked and made a noise, but my mouth can't make the G sound. The doctor looked disappointed. He scribbled something onto his clipboard, pulled out another stack of cards, and then said loudly, "I'm going to ask you some questions now, Melody. These might be hard, but do your best, okay?" I just looked at him and waited while he placed the first set of cards in front of me. Number 1. Which of these is not like the others? Did he get this stuff from Sesame Street? He showed me a picture of a tomato, a cherry, a round red balloon, and a banana. I know he was probably looking for the balloon as the answer, but that just seemed too easy. So I pointed to the banana because the first 3 were round and red, and the banana was not. Dr. Hugely just sighed and scribbled more notes. Number 2, he said. He showed me 4 more cards. This time there were pictures of a cow, a whale, a camel, and an elephant. Which animal gives birth to a calf? Now, I watch Animal Planet all the time. I know for a fact that all the animals he had pictured there had babies called a calf. I thought doctors were supposed to be smart. What to do? I hit each picture slowly and carefully, then did it once more just to make sure he understood. But I don't think he did. I heard him mumble, "cow," as he wrote more notes. It was clear he was giving up on me. I noticed a copy of Goodnight Moon on his bookshelf, but I think it was written in Spanish. It was called Buenas noches, Luna. That would have been fun to look at, but I had no way of telling him that I would like to see the book. After watching Sesame Street and Dora the Explorer about 1,000,000 times, and sitting for hours watching the Spanish channels, I could understand quite a bit of Spanish if it was spoken slowly enough, and at least enough words to read the title of that book. He never thought to ask me about that, of course. I knew the words and melodies of hundreds of songs, a symphony exploding inside my head, with no one to hear it but me. But he never asked me about music. I knew all the colors and shapes and animals that children my age were supposed to know, plus lots more. In my head, I could count to 1,000, forward and backward. I could identify hundreds of words on sight, but all of that was just stuck inside. Dr. Hugely, even though he had been to college for like 1,000,000 years, would never be smart enough to see inside of me. So I put on my handicapped face and took my mind back to last summer when Mom and I went to the zoo. I really liked the elephants, but talk about stink. Actually, Dr. Hugely sort of reminded me of one of them. My mom and the doctor had no idea why I was smiling as we rolled into the waiting room while he wrote up his eval of me. It didn't take long. I'm always amazed at how adults assume I can't hear. They talk about me as if I'm invisible, figuring I'm too retarded to understand their conversation. I learned quite a bit this way, but this conversation was really awful. He didn't even try to soften the news for my mom, who I'm sure felt like she got hit by a truck. He began by clearing his throat. Mrs. Brooks, he then said, it is my opinion that Melody is severely brain damaged and profoundly retarded. Whoa. Even though I was only 5, I had watched enough telethons to know that this was bad, really bad. I felt a thud in my gut. My mom gasped. Then she said nothing for a full minute. Finally, she took a great big deep breath and protested quietly. But she's bright. I can see it in her eyes. You love her. It's only normal to have wishful thinking, Dr. Hughley told her gently. No, she has a spark. More than that, a flame of intelligence. I just know it, my mom insisted, sounding a little stronger. It takes some time to accept the limitations of a loved child. She has cerebral palsy, Mrs. Brooks. I know the name of her condition, doctor, my mom said with ice in her voice, but a person is much more than the name of a diagnosis on a chart. Good try, Mom, I was thinking, but already her voice was losing its edge, melting into the mushiness of helplessness. But she laughs at all my jokes, my mom told him, the ice in her voice replaced by desperation. Right at the punchline. Mom's voice faded. What she was saying sounded ridiculous even to me, but I could see she couldn't find the right words to explain her gut feeling that I had some smarts stuck in here. Dr. Hughley looked from her to me. He shook his head and then said, You're lucky she can even smile and laugh, but Melody will never be able to walk on her own or speak a single sentence. She will never be able to feed herself, take care of herself, or understand anything more than simple instructions. Once you accept that, you can deal with the future. Now that was just plain mean. My mom hardly cried what she did that day. She cried and she cried and she cried. Dr. Hughley had to give her a whole box of tissues. Both of them ignored me while she sobbed, and he tried to find nice words to say to make her feel better. He didn't do a very good job. Finally, he gave her some options. You and your husband have several decisions to make, he told Mom. You can choose to keep her here at home, or you can send her to a special school for the disabled. There aren't many choices here locally. Where do you get those almost pleasant-sounding phrases to describe kids like me? Mom had made a sound that could have been the mewing of a kitten. I think she was losing it. Dr. Hughley continued, You can also decide to put Melody in a facility where she can be cared for and kept comfortable. He pulled out a colorful brochure with a smiling child in a wheelchair on the cover and handed it to Mom. I trembled as she took it. Let's see, the doctor said. Melody is 5, right? That's a perfect age for her to learn to adjust to a new environment. You and your husband can just get on with your lives without her as a burden. In time, her memories of you will fade. I stared at Mom frantically. I didn't want to be sent away. Was I a burden? I never thought about it like that. Maybe it would be easier for them if I weren't around. I gulped. My hands got cold. Mom wasn't looking at me. She was staring daggers at Dr. Hughley. She crumpled up the tissue she held and stood up. Now let me tell you something, Doctor. There is no way in heaven that we will be sending Melody away to a nursing home. I blinked. Was this my mom? I blinked again and she was still there, right up in Dr. Hughley's face. But she wasn't finished. You know what? My mom said as she angrily hurled the brochure into the trash can. I think you're cold and insensitive. I hope you never have a child with difficulties. You'd probably put it out with your trash. Dr. Hughley looked shocked. And what's more, she continued, I think you're wrong. No, I know you are. Melody has more brains hidden inside of her head than you'll ever have, despite all those fancy degrees from fancy schools that you have posted all over your walls. It was the doctor's turn to blink. You've got it easy. You have all your physical functions working properly. You never have to struggle just to be understood. You think you're smart because you have a medical degree? He was wise enough now to keep his mouth shut and ashamed enough to lower his head. Now Mom was on a roll. You're not so intelligent, sir. You're just lucky. All of us who have all of our faculties intact are just plain blessed. Melody is able to figure out things, communicate, manage in a world where nothing works right for her. She's the one with the true intelligence. She marched out of his office then, rolling me swiftly through the thick doors. In the hall we did a quick fist bump. Well, the best that I could manage. My hands were no longer cold. Melody, I'm taking you right now and enrolling you at Spalding Street Elementary School, she announced with determination as we headed back to the car. Let's get busy.